Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your weekly review of Dark Side of the Ring. This week up is gentleman Chris Adams. I would say gentleman by name, but not by nature. But obviously a difficult one as well. And you always get contrasting views in these shows. Between the guys who were close to him and, travelled the road with him, and those other people, obviously family members, the daughter and the brother and the sons and stuff like that, and all always have a very different view, because obviously when he was at home and stuff like that, you would see a different side to these guys and stuff like that and all. But this was kind of a rinse and repeat one as well. Anyone who knows the Von Erich story would definitely know Chris Adams, and of course Gino Hernandez we'll talk about as well. And they were intricate in the WCW territory. Fritz Von Erich down in Dallas down there. But it was again a very similar episode, a tale of a guy who was super talented, who moved to the States, was a big deal where he went. But again, lifestyle, drugs, drink, everything got in the way again. And there was a violent nature to this guy in relation to alcohol. So when he consumed alcohol, they described it as a Jekyll and Hyde situation. And we've heard this story many times down through the history of pro wrestling. But this one's kind of a little bit sort of different insofar as, he started out in World of Sport, obviously joined Haystacks, Big Daddy, Mick McManus, all these guys, but found his ceiling in there where he couldn't progress. Himself and his brother were judo champions. His brother was a silver medalist in the Olympics, so certainly a sporting background there. Chris heads off to the States and finds his way to World Class Championship Wrestling. He was a big star in there, and to make it in there you had to be a big star. This was the time of the Von Erichs, the Freebirds, all these different guys in there. So if you were successful down there and you were getting over, you were a real talent, you were a real star. We hear Dave Manning, and I love Dave Manning when he talks on these shows as well, because he's quite the historian. But not only that, he's a straight shooter on these things. He'll tell you exactly how it was and stuff like that. So for you guys watching the show, you kind of have to decipher down, who do you believe? Do you believe the kind of slant that sometimes the family puts on it, or do you believe the guys who were there in the midst of it and stuff like that? And Dave is certainly one of those guys. He talks about the super kick and how he perfected it, and it sounded like it had taken your head off, the way he slapped his tie and stuff like that and all. And when I hear that, I just think of Shawn Michaels and the Bucks and the Usos and all these kind of guys who have brought this on. But the real one there, we hear from ref James Bird, who was a ref in World Class Championship Wrestling. He's talking about how WCCW in Dallas, let this sink in folks, was as popular as the Dallas Cowboys. Mad, isn't it? Mad to think that when you think about the NFL and American football, that down there in that territory, how red hot it was. And we spoke about it, of course, with the Bruiser Brody episodes. We spoke about it with the Von Erichs, the Iron Claw, all these kind of things. We know how huge it was down there and how hot it was at the time and how real it was at the time. But finds himself in a little bit of trouble again. Number of incidents. Super kicks a guy in the bar, nearly takes his eye clean out. In trouble over that. Level of domestic violence as well going on, obviously from the drinking. And then ends up getting into an incident on a plane on a flight back from the Caribbean. Or as Kevin would say, the Caribbean. Depending on what way you want to talk about it. And ends up beating the living shit out of a co-pilot on the plane, slapped up an air hostess as well for refusing to serve him drink, and ends up doing time in prison for that. So kind of, put a bit of shade and a bit of dark on the promotion and stuff like that they didn't appreciate. Comes back in and he's obviously tagging with Gino Hernandez. Little bit of a face to heel turn there, attacks Kevin, and becomes Gino's partner. And unfortunately they room together, and there's a massive use of cocaine and stuff like that, and Gino Hernandez ends up passing away as a result of an overdose, which is very, very sad. Another super talented guy. And Chris can't deal with this, and his way to deal with this obviously is to hit the bottle, and when he hits the bottle, this is what comes about. So really, really difficult at this stage. Then he meets up with a girl, Tony, and he starts dating her, and again it's drugs and drink and all that kind of stuff, and it just gets really deep here and stuff like that. And this is where I get, this is where it sort of takes a twirl here. He ends ends up training Stone Cold Steve Austin in and around the Sportatorium, and then they do a kind of an angle which involves Chris's ex Jeannie, which is never a good thing to do, and that doesn't go too well. Steve ends up going off and getting his break in WCW. Chris obviously feels a little bit hard done by being left behind, of course, but ends up going off to GWF, I think it was. And from GWF then he finds himself going off then to WCW. He's trying to resurrect his career at this stage. His career is kind of not good and stuff like that, you know. A number of other instances and drink and alcohol and all that kind of stuff. Beats up the wife again. She needs facial surgery and all this kind of stuff, and you know, again, we call into question gentleman in the moniker, you know. Very difficult. But ends up falling out of WCW as well. Goes in there to resurrect his career. Ends up kind of becoming kind of a new age jobber in there, and of course he's not happy with that, very disappointed with that and all, you know. Tony, of course, the one at the time, ends up the decision. She leaves Chris when he heads off to that run in Global, you know. From there, then kind of, you know, takes a number of twists, moves in with the Boo guy, and they're Boo Ray, and they're kind of friendly, and you know, starts out really, really good. He's obviously looking after Chris and stuff like that. Chris is staying in his house. Boo Ray seems to be picking up all the bills, all that kind of stuff, to a point where it gets frustrating. At a stage, feels like he's being used. And then it comes to a point where a fight breaks out in the house, and he rips the bedpost off the bed, starts beating this guy with the bedpost, starts biting the face off him, all this. Just again, you know, and this is before we even get into talking about prior to that, the girl he had there, Linda, I think it was. Very, very sad, you know what I mean? They get into that drug GHB, and she ends up flatlining, and she ends up dying, which is really, really, really difficult. So then he ends up, I skipped ahead there. Then he ends up with Boo Ray, and they end up getting into this altercation, and he's absolutely beating this guy to within an inch of his life, and then this guy picks up a gun and shoots him. Went to shoot him in the shoulder, they say, but whatever way Chris turned, he turned and he hit him in the chest, hit him in the heart, and he ends up passing away. And Bill Ray gets off on the case in relation that he feared for his life. He was protecting his life, basically. And that comes to the end of Gentleman Chris Adams. But it's a kind of a weird one. The conundrum through the episode is really between, you know, really on one side, those who are around him and working with him all the time and stuff like that, kind of knew the craziness of him and all that kind of stuff, and they described, as I said, the Jekyll and Hyde kind of situation. And then on the other side, you have the kind of family slant on it. You listen to the daughter, the son, the brother, and they're not too sure about some of the stories that come out and stuff like that. And obviously you want to be in defence of your father and stuff like that and all, but it's hard to defend this because most of this stuff was well known. And even prior to this Dark Side episode, if you had a lot of interest in the Von Erich story and stuff like that, you would know about Chris Adams, you would know about Gino Hernandez, you would know about the drugs and the drink and everything else that went on. So yeah, another kind of tough episode, really another episode of really what might have been another lost opportunity, a guy who got swallowed up somewhat by the business, you know, turned to drink, drugs, and I suppose became some sort of psychopathic way through drinking. I know a lot of people out there would have a person in their company or the person that they would know who you would turn around and go, that guy should never drink, who just drinks and just looks for a reason to go off. And this was Chris Adams. So very, very sad, super talented guy. But next week, folks, I'm sure we have a belter of an episode. Sherry Martel is on next week, and I'm really looking forward to that one. It'll be interesting to see what falls out of that. But all I can leave you with is the Chris Adams episode, Gentleman Chris Adams. Very similar to other episodes, a tale of super talented athlete who didn't reach his levels that he should have, got derailed by drink and drugs, entered into violence both domestically and out there, and got himself into an awful lot of trouble that could have easily been avoided, but unfortunately not. My hearts go out to his family when they're talking about it and stuff like that, but it's hard to deny the undeniable, isn't it? Gentleman in name, but not gentleman in nature. Until next time, folks, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification button, and drop a like on the video. I will be back with a Fulham preview for the Liverpool game on the Shankly Sessions, and also check out my review from last night on the Atalanta failings. Sad times at the moment with the way this Jurgen Klopp era is going. Talk to you again real soon, folks. Cheers.